With U.S. President Donald Trump and yesterday with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. The American administration told me that it was the president's intention to withdraw their forces from Syria. They made clear that they had other ways to express their influence in the region. This is, of course, an American decision. We will learn its schedule, its mode of operation, and of course, the implications for us. In any event, we will make sure to maintain Israel's security and protect ourselves in this region.
That is just one leader here in the Middle East with a whole lot at stake from that decision.
Well, joining us from Istanbul is Ali Mustafa. He's a presenter and correspondent for TRT World. But first, let's go to Washington and speak with Dan Arbel from the Center for Middle East Policy at the Brookings Institution. And Dan, what kind of consequences, what are the implications of the U.S. pullout from Syria?
Well, the decision has very grave consequences, I'm afraid. This is a Christmas gift for the Iranians, for Hezbollah, for the Assad regime, for the Russians, and it puts Israel in a very difficult situation, facing all these threats alone. Without the U.S. was the linchpin of the situation, the current situation in Syria, which was relatively stable. It was not ideal, but it was relatively calm. Without the U.S. in the picture, the consequences might be grave, and it's a slippery slope that may slide very soon into intensified conflict once again.
Ali, with Turkey readying an offensive on Kurdish forces in northern Syria, this sort of sounds like a Christmas gift to Ankara as well.
It indeed is a Christmas gift for Ankara, and it's more than Turkey or Erdogan could ever have asked for. In fact, they've been asking for the U.S. for the past 3 years now to separate itself from what Turkey considers to be the PKK terror group's Syrian branch, the YPG. And now with this offer of a blanket withdrawal, Turkey, it might seem bad from the Israeli point of view, but from Turkey and Erdogan's point of view, this is a win.
So, Dan, I want to have you elaborate a little bit more on something you said before. You call this a gift also for Hezbollah. The Trump administration has made Iran sort of a pillar of its foreign policy, saying it has a very hard line on Iran, that it is going to take on Iran. We've seen those renewed sanctions. We saw the withdrawal from the nuclear deal. What do you think this turn in policy is going to do directly for Iran?
So, as you said, John Bolton, the national security advisor of the president, stated just several months ago that the U.S. will not withdraw until Iran is out of the picture in Syria, is not removed out of the picture in Syria. I don't know how John Bolton feels this evening, but certainly if the U.S. is not present in Syria, if the 2,000 U.S. forces are withdrawing from Syria, how exactly is the U.S. going to actively get the Iranians out of the picture? It begs to be explained, and I don't see how that happens. I think that it leaves a lot of leverage for the Iranians. It leaves a lot of freedom of maneuverability. They can carry on with their own business. They can continue to support the Assad regime, continue cooperating with the Russians, almost uninterruptedly. When the U.S. was around, it would have been a different story. They were contained a bit. Now I think that the genie's out of the bottle and they can do whatever they want to do, and I don't see how this bodes with the rest of the U.S. strategy vis-a-vis Iran, which you've mentioned is a strategy of pressure, of sanctions, of removing Iran out of Syria. I simply don't know how they square that circle.
Ali, it is being reported that President Trump spoke with President Erdogan even on Friday, right before making this decision. Is it possible that this is all part of a, let's say, a bigger Mideast picture? Perhaps President Trump trying to get Turkish cooperation on the, for example, Jamal Khashoggi situation?
Well, that is what some commentators have said. But for Turkey, these are two separate issues. This is an issue, according to Turkey, that it has been asking the U.S. to clarify, to take a stance on for 3 years, even before the July 15 coup. And Gulen, as far as Turkey is concerned, is a separate process. It follows a separate legal track for Turkey. But just to clarify, Turkey doesn't see it as a zero-sum game, essentially. It says it can work with the US, it says it can work with Iran and Russia, and even Israel when it comes to stabilizing Syria. So the focus here for Turkey is the stability and security of Syria, something that it has invested time, effort, resources, and troops to. Keep in mind that Turkish troops backing the Free Syrian Army are in control of Syrian territory where approximately 7 to 8 million displaced, internally displaced Syrians are living. So lots at stake for Turkey. The next move then, and this is a big question, is when does Turkey move in with its proposed offensive? Does it move in? How does that equation change after this U.S. offer? These are the questions in Ankara.
Ali, briefly, let's not forget, on the same day as we're speaking, the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani is meeting with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Do you think that this is going to change that conversation?
I don't think it'll change the conversation, but it will definitely add on to the conversation. Keep in mind that since the U.S. reimposed sanctions on Iran in May, the Turkish position has become critical economically for Iran. During this visit, it is expected that Rouhani and Erdogan will try to push up trade between the two countries to $30 billion. Turkey also has an exemption on those U.S. sanctions, which had to do with Iran's suspected nuclear program. So a lot at stake there.
All right, Ali Mustafa in Istanbul, thanks very much for being with us. Dan Arbel, stay with us. A lot more to talk about linked to this region. Kalev, as we mentioned, this has drawn a lot of reaction in Washington as well.
Yes, we are seeing pushback from some of the Republicans in Congress. For example, Lindsey Graham, the Republican senator, tweeting there will be much resentment and feeling of abandonment that will be directed toward American personnel. The confusion surrounding our Syrian policy is making life much more difficult and dangerous for Americans in the region.
And let's not forget one more note that we didn't even get to, which is a big one, the Kurds. The U.S. has largely relied on the Kurds to defeat the Islamic State, that defeat that President Trump himself is citing today. This for them is going to be a major blow, just as Turkey enters with that offensive, the United States announcing it is set to leave.